Your messaging strategy is only as strong as the weakest link. And when we look at the different links in the chain that your message will travel as it goes through the carriers to your handset, one big component of that is the carriers themselves. And we haven't done a full deep dive on this channel about who the different carriers are, what their quirks are, and what you should know about them. And so in today's video, we are going to do exactly that, doing a deep dive on AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. Hi, my name is Will Craig. I'm a co-founder of a company called Signal House. We are a messaging provider that specializes in connectivity for CRM systems and marketing platforms, but we can power any communication that goes from an application to a person. That's a software system to an individual's handset, and in the reverse, from a handset to a software system. And we do this through the process called A2P registration, or application to person registration, with 10-digit numbers. These are the numbers that you're all familiar with, where the first 3 digits correspond to a local area code, that are called in the industry 10DLC, or 10-digit long code numbers. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and dig into the carriers and what you need to know about them to help navigate the messaging ecosystem. Let's start with AT&T. If there were 3 words that I could describe them, it would be slow, deliberate, and consistent. And so AT&T does take a little bit of time before they implement something new. If you're connected to the RCS environment, you know that AT&T was the last carrier that would actually be adopting RCS nationwide within the United States. Take this approach a lot of times when it comes to different enhancements and improvements within the messaging ecosystem. So they're very deliberate. And so slow can be a bad thing, but they're not slow in the sense that they drag their feet. They are deliberate. So when AT&T does launch something, you know that it's going to be polished. It's going to work very, very seamlessly, and it's going to work well. So again, they use a standard process for their connections and for their routing, which means that for a messaging provider like us, AT&T, we don't even really need to think about them because it is so simple, seamless, and easy to connect your phone numbers to them. You just make a single API call, it's connected, it's working, it is nearly instant, and it is quite seamless. And the other thing that you need to know about them is that they measure their throughput through messages per minute, and really segments per minute. And we have a really good deep dive on segments. If you want to see that, just head over to our website. We have that in our guides. Segment is really just how the carriers measure the amount of data that you can send in a single message. So they allow you to send a certain number of segments per minute for SMS and for MMS, and that's how they measure their throughput. So next, let's go to Verizon. And if there's just one word that I could describe Verizon, it would be secretive. And that's because we don't know a lot about them. Us messaging providers don't know a lot about the back end of Verizon. When it comes to their throughput, for example, there is no data on this. They do not publish how they measure throughput and how they manage throughput. Same with carrier flags, for instance. So AT&T carrier flags are going to be mostly based on content. So the types of content that you're sending and content filtering, where they've identified that this content could theoretically be a scam or spam messaging. Verizon, we do not have a lot of good data on this. What we generally see is that Verizon flags happen later. So you first get a T-Mobile flag, and we'll get into them later. And then in AT&T, Verizon usually, in my sort of experience, is just when you have carrier flags with other carriers, you can also get a Verizon carrier flag. So as far as Verizon's sort of stance within the messaging ecosystem, they are very innovative. They are first movers. So they were the first carrier to actually adopt and launch RCS pilots. RCS is just rich communication. It is a new standard of messaging. We'll have a video that deep dives that. But if you are connected to the RCS ecosystem and the RCS environment, you'll know that Verizon was the first mover on that. And they generally are. They're very innovative, and they want to try out new things and support new things. As far as message routing and the way that the messaging actually works, they are the same as AT&T. So it is also going to be incredibly standard. So just a standard process. Again, Verizon's not one that we really think about too much, especially because Verizon flags are more rare than AT&T and T-Mobile. So now we've saved the best for last. Let's talk about T-Mobile. If there were 3 words that I would use to describe T-Mobile, it would be strict, different, and unique. So they have different processes, and they're a very unique carrier within the ecosystem. And they're also very strict. And the fact that they have roughly 45% of the market share in the US means that they can throw their weight around. They are by far the most dominant carrier when it comes to market share. It's actually a really interesting turnaround from where T-Mobile was actually not doing very well 10 to 15 years ago. They had an incredible turnaround, ended up acquiring Sprint. We all know about that. And with that, they've been able to really cement themselves within the messaging ecosystem. And so what you need to know about this is that T-Mobile does have their own special process that they use. So they do not use the same standard process that AT&T and Verizon use for both attaching numbers to campaigns and also routing of messaging. And because of that, there can be some technical hiccups and glitches. And so we generally see the longest time period for the number to get attached and ready on the T-Mobile side. And so you'll see in the Signal House portal, for example, we actually don't tell you that the number is ready to use until it's fully attached with T-Mobile, and it can take a little bit of time. We see up to 60 minutes for inbound and outbound working perfectly with T-Mobile when you provision a new number. And that's not a Signal House thing. That is just industry-wide. It takes a little bit longer with T-Mobile. In extremely rare cases, I've only seen this one time, and I provisioned tens of thousands of numbers. I've seen one instance where it took up to 24 hours for it to fully get live with T-Mobile. And so because T-Mobile has the market share that they do, they're also a driver of a lot of the changes that happen in the messaging ecosystem. So when it comes to, for example, fining people for submitting shaft content, that is a T-Mobile initiative. The same is for just what gets approved. So the carriers are continuously telling the direct connect aggregators, or DCAs. These are the middlemen between your messaging provider and the carriers that both enable business messaging to all the carriers in the US and also are charged with preventing scam and spam messages. So T-Mobile is consistently telling the DCAs what kind of traffic it wants to see on the network and what kind of traffic it absolutely will not allow on the network. And that makes it to where your campaign approvals and reviews get a little bit stricter. That's primarily T-Mobile who drives that. T-Mobile's also easier to get carrier flags on, and they're very touchy when it comes to message frequency and what it's called segment bursting, where you have a very long message that has quite a few segments, and you're sending that out to a massive group of individuals. So that can trigger a flag. So that's why I always say break up your long messages into multiple discrete messages so that you're sending them and it is appearing as obviously separate messages with separate content, even if you are sending them to a high volume of individuals. And then the thing to know about T-Mobile when it comes to throughput is that T-Mobile throughput is measured per day. So they give you a daily allotment of segments, same as AT&T. Segments is how everything is measured. They give you a daily allotment of that. So you have so many messages that you are able to send per day. With T-Mobile, this can obviously be increased, as can the AT&T per minute messaging through standard vetting. And so we actually very recently did a video on our channel about standard vetting. So take a look at that if you would like. And so the upshot of all of this for you is just making sure that you understand the different quirks of the different carriers. So if you are seeing some issues and you're told by your messaging provider this is exclusive to T-Mobile, that's going to make sense because they use a different platform. They have a different, unique way that they do the provisioning. And because of that, sometimes there can be issues. And so this just helps you better identify, if I have an AT&T flag, what could that be for? I've exceeded my T-Mobile throughput. Oh, that's right. I know that that's per day. It's just helping you identify those little quirks and unique items about each of these carriers within our space. And so I hope this video was really helpful. If it was, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. We release videos like this 5 days a week, all about the messaging ecosystem. And so we will see you in the next one. Thanks so much.